Is this the 2008 financial crisis all over again? Chinese real estate giant Evergrande is on the verge of bankruptcy, and that could spell trouble for the global economy. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Last week I told you about major protests erupting around China over the real estate giant Evergrande. Things are not looking good for Evergrande.
The Hong Kong-listed giant has become one of the most indebted companies in the world, with more than $300 billion worth of liabilities. And it's struggling to pay it back, sparking fears of a default that could send tremors through China's economy.
But it's not just China's economy. Already, the Evergrande crisis is having a global impact. In fact, it has some asking if this could be China's Lehman Brothers moment. The collapse of Lehman Brothers in New York is what sparked the 2008 financial crisis. And this past week, the Dow Jones Industrial Average ended Monday's trading session down more than 600 points after steep stock market declines in Europe and Hong Kong and other parts of Asia. A similar story played out at London's FTSE 100, which registered a sharp drop, falling below 7,000 for the first time since July. The Stoxx Europe 600 index was down by 2.1%, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng index fell by 4% during trading. The Evergrande crisis is also affecting cryptocurrencies. At one point, the price of Bitcoin was down 12%. According to the crypto data website CoinMarketCap, the value of the world's cryptocurrencies plunged to a low of less than $1.9 trillion on Monday, nearly 11% less than 24 hours prior, and reflecting a loss of more than $250 billion. Cryptocurrency proponents have said crypto is a safe investment because its price is isolated from the stock market. In other words, if the stock market drops, the price of your Bitcoin won't. However, that seems to not always be the case, because it's tied to other financial assets, like Evergrande. Evergrande got in trouble for their wealth management products, or WMPs. Basically, people were loaning money to Evergrande, and Evergrande was promising huge interest rates, up to 13%. Evergrande used that loan money for real estate developments. But now, Evergrande can't pay those investors back and can't pay construction companies. According to Mark Williams, chief Asia economist at Capital Economics, there are about 1.4 million property owners who have paid deposits and await delivery of Evergrande properties. We don't know whether they can build the houses, but it seems unlikely. Real estate activity is about 30% of China's GDP. A potential default by Evergrande could spread to markets outside China as it has huge, high-interest offshore bonds. UBS estimates that $19 billion of Evergrande's liabilities are comprised of offshore bonds. And with U.S. stock markets dropping, how do they cover their losses? Well, some institutions are selling Bitcoin, and so the Bitcoin price dropped. Basically, everything is tied together, and we're all tied to China. So will the collapse of Evergrande lead to a global financial crisis like 2008? Well, depends on who you ask. More after the break. Welcome back. The possible collapse of Evergrande could have a devastating effect on the Chinese economy. Evergrande reportedly owes money to around 171 domestic banks and 121 other financial firms. If Evergrande defaults, banks and other lenders may be forced to lend less. This could lead to what is known as a credit crunch, when companies struggle to borrow money at affordable rates. If companies can't borrow, they can't grow, and might even go under, especially as the Chinese economy is already struggling because of COVID. But how badly will it hurt the global economy? Could it be another 2008 financial crisis? Well, it depends on who you ask. Given its size, the company's troubles could result in a slowdown in the real estate sector and have a domino effect on the Chinese economy and, by extension, the global economy. Several recent reports about Evergrande have referred to a potential default as a Lehman moment. Some are talking about the Evergrande contagion. That's because the Chinese economy is so large, and the rest of the world has stupidly invested a lot of money in China. So a collapse in China will now affect the rest of the world. Jimmy Chang, Chief Investment Officer at Rockefeller Global Family Office, told CNBC that if China were to have a serious economic issue because of China Evergrande, the rest of the global economy would have contagion from it. However, S&P Global Ratings said a default by Evergrande would cause more than mere ripples in financial markets, but would be unlikely to lead to a tidal wave of defaults. Still others, like investment firm BlackRock, say there's nothing to worry about. Why? Because the Chinese Communist Party will save us all. One of their top investors said the banking system tends to be controlled by the government. There is government intervention that presumably would come in. My sense is the government will act. And my sense is it will stabilize. I guess BlackRock is sticking with their whole triple your investment in China thing come hell or high water. But it's not just BlackRock. Many are operating under the delusion that the global economy will be saved because of the Chinese Communist Party's grip on the China economy. One investment bank wrote the chances of systemic risks in China's economy are low because the Chinese Communist Party wouldn't want anything bad to happen ahead of a major party meeting next year. So you see, everything's fine. Unless, the party makes a mistake. A capital economics analyst says, even if Evergrande were the first of many property developers to go bust in China, we suspect it would take a policy misstep for this to cause a sharp slowdown in its economy. Credit ratings firm Fitch Ratings said the risk of significant pressure on house prices in the event of a default would be low unless the restructuring or liquidation of its assets becomes disorderly. And why would the Communist Party botch the job? Well, except for that time they totally botched the stock market rescue in 2015. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party doesn't want an economic collapse, and will do whatever it takes to prevent that. For example, a Chinese state-owned company could take over Evergrande and repay everyone's debts. Or Chinese state-owned banks could buy up all of Evergrande's bad debt and repay it. That's a great thing about investing in China, you see. There's no risk because the Chinese Communist Party will bail you out. Of course, that depends on who you are. Chinese people who bought property or investments from Evergrande, chances are better for you because the party doesn't want a populist uprising. Foreign investors with exposure to Evergrande, no, sorry, you're still screwed. Billionaire founder and chairman of Evergrande, yeah, you're going to prison. The flip side of a regime that offers this type of bailout, of course, is that if you make too much money, the CCP will just take it from you. Take money from successful companies and redistribute it to failing companies the state wants to prop up. Already, several Chinese state-owned enterprises are in talks with Evergrande and could possibly take over some of Evergrande's projects. But as of this recording, no deals have been reached. Meanwhile, Evergrande took steps to repay some of their bonds this week, and that's helping smooth things over temporarily. Still, my favorite Chinese state-run media, the Global Times, is saying Evergrande isn't too big to fail. And the president of at least one investment management firm points out that the party has been kind of cracking down on businesses. We're seeing a different change in tone. The way the government is treating business leaders, Western investors. How will they handle a bailout that everyone thinks is coming in some way, shape, or form? Will Western bondholders be bailed out? No, I'm pretty sure we can just trust the Chinese Communist Party to take care of everything. And now, it's time for me to answer a question from a member of the China Uncensored 50 Cent Army, a viewer who supports our channel on the crowdfunding website Patreon and Locals. Shiminsky on Patreon asks, I follow these guys and you own me, but I'm funding them here on Patreon, not Locals. I can't afford to just double the bills. Is Locals a better place to support them instead? Like, do you get more? Do they get a higher percent of the proceeds, etc.? That's a question I've been getting a lot now that we've launched a community on Locals, another crowdfunding website. So there are a lot of things in common. For example, if you support this show on Patreon or Locals, you can still ask me questions that I'll answer on the show. But there are some things unique to each. On Patreon, depending on what you give, There are different rewards that you won't get on Locals. You can get our monthly newsletter, get access to the music of the show, and even a private video chat with me and a handful of other Patreon supporters. But Locals is like a personalized China Uncensored social media. The great thing about Locals is that it's a free speech platform, and we're able to build a community on Locals away from YouTube censorship. As a paying Locals subscriber, you can post stuff yourself, interact with each other and with me, Matt, and Shelley. We also do live streams that you can only see on Locals, where we talk about China news, what we're working on, and where supporters can ask us questions. And we've got more exciting stuff planned for Locals as well. The choice of which platform to use is up to you. But however you support the show, whether it's on Patreon or Locals, or even just sharing these episodes with your friends and family, just know I am incredibly grateful for your help. The Chinese Communist Party is powerful, but we've got the China Uncensored 50-cent army. So thanks for your question and your support, Sheminsky. You can check out Locals at chinauncensored.locals.com or Patreon at patreon.com/ChinaUncensored. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.